a song of new light, life beyond the stars. Sing a song of new light, music travels so far. Sing the song of a new world, a world without the fear. Sing the song of freedom, spirit will come so near.
So it started early this morning about, is it snowing where you are, is it ice where you are? So we decided whoever needed to be here would be here, and pretty much posted it is icy here, so we just seem to be on the cusp of that. So welcome to those of you who are here, I have to say. As I was thinking about today, last weekend, before I got the stomach flu, I have to say, I was lucky enough to go see Krishna Das on retreat. And it was beautiful, an absolutely beautiful experience, I have to say. And it made me think about my pursuit of God. Many of you know, my mom raised us to think God didn't like our family. Specifically, God did not like the Nohavec family. Because she'd been through such horrors, she figured God didn't like her, I have to say. And if she was going to be cursed by God, so was her kids. So we were pretty much taught, don't expect good because only bad is going to come. So that's how we kind of grew up. And we were Catholic at that point, but we never went to church, I have to say. I was actually envious of kids that got dressed up and went to like Sunday school. I said, we must be missing out on something if they're all dressing up to go there. And I really thought that, I have to say. And there was a Methodist church across the street, and we didn't go there either, but I used to sneak into there just to see what was in that church. So that's my experience of God growing up, I have to say. And that lasted for a very long time, I have to say. And as I got older and went into my old, crazy world of teenage years and young adult years, I have to say, that was a confusing image of God for me, because whatever I'd come to believe, it certainly was an angry man sitting on a throne at that point for me. But through time, I heard a voice that said to me, you're going to be a Catholic nun. And at first I said to that voice, no way, I'm not doing it, you're in the wrong house. And then I started the search, which has now continued for the rest of my life, I have to say. And as I started to look around at nuns I could possibly enter and talk to my best friend about it, who tried to talk me out of it at first, I have to say. She said no. She said to the point of she would give me books about priests who fell in love with women. I don't think you should enter the convent. But now she totally believes it was the right decision for me, I have to say. I looked for the most progressive places I could go because I was still smoking. But as I entered that, and I will tell you this, on the day that I did my vows, on the day, that morning of kneeling on an altar and turning my life over to God, having sold my car, having sold my property, having given away any money I have in the bank. And I can remember that night, because I was in a convent at New Brunswick and still smoking. And I went up the third floor to the only place we were supposed to smoke, out on the roof. And there was such a freeing feeling in that minute, It's like, it's just you and me kind of God. But there was a real feeling about it because I'd given up everything, But that kind of just started a journey, And I think it maybe started to transform my version of what God looked like. And I don't think I realized it back then, but that journey is really important for everybody in this room, I have to say. Because where you were, hopefully, is not where you still are in your own spiritual, religious search for whatever you consider God to be. Because if it is, I've come to find out most people that stay that way either really do that because they keep searching and agree this is the right place for me. I hope they're not there because that's what my mother did and that's what my grandmother did and that's what every generation before me did. Because then it turns almost to me like sheep who don't think for themselves. So as I left the convent and found spiritualism and really struggled with, is that okay with you, God? Talking to the dead. This place of putting the spiritualists. I can remember when I was in the hospital and they said, what's your religion? And I had always put Catholic. And the first time I wrote spiritualist, it was a big thing for me, I have to say. Because it's a personal journey, I have to say. And just those little things that may not be big to anyone else, in your own personal story is a really big thing. So for me to put spiritualist on that, and for them to look at me and say, what's that? We've never heard of that. Was a big place in my own journey. And as time goes on, I have to say, in my personal relationship with God, from thinking I totally let him down when I left the convent, because I promised God I would stay. But I also came to believe that if I stayed, I was not going to look like a person being in love with God. And that's not a good reason to stay, I have to say. So I left. And since then, I've cursed God, I have to say. I have sat where someone has lost a child and said, what kind of God could you possibly be? And honesty of that. And I've stood in places where I've heard his voice again and said, God, there's something to this. And as many of you will know, I believe every person in their path, I have to say, much like in the early Bible days, people used to see signs and had visits from angels, and there was transfiguration. I think for every life of you that walk along the planet, you should look for those signs. You should have visiting angels. You should hear voices that speak to you. There should be burning bushes, I have to say. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, much like I used to sit in the convent and talk to God, the saints, the angels, and say, please talk back. Why wouldn't Grandma talk back? They loved us most, I have to say. So in the spiritual path of standing for things, sometimes that may not be the traditional way. It still feels like the right place, I have to say. And on an ordinary day, you would believe in this church when it's really crowded. Many other people are beginning to believe that as well. But I've also come to find out that in that place where I thought, God had abandoned us, or God had let us down, or what kind of God could you be where there's such horror, that comes down to mostly things we're supposed to experience in life. And I've also come to find out, as you watch a little child fall as they begin to want to walk, you let them take that fall as much as, you're thinking, oh, at the minute, that just hurt their little knees, And I think on a big spiritual plane of where we want to ascend to as spiritual beings, some of the really hard things we go through may be the path to the next planes of existence if we're supposed to continually progress, as our spiritualist principles say. So if some days we are supposed to be angels future along our path, maybe these are the things where we fall down in life when something really hard comes along. But it's just on a bigger path. And I've also come to believe that God winks. And I look for that now. I certainly have been in the Catholic places and still adore those chapels where you go and sit in the quiet and find the core to that belief system, which is still precious and beautiful, I have to say, of someone that taught us the way to walk. But I love going, and I cannot wait to someday go to India, to the Valley of the Gods and sing and dance with those people that sing and dance and experience a different experience of still, whatever way, seeking that God. There's a beautiful poem called The Hound of Heaven. I believe it's by Francis Thompson. And he talks about God sought me down the highways and the byways of my life. And I truly believe that God came looking for me. And it wasn't the man on the throne. It was a spiritual being that says, I am a part of you and you are separate from me in some ways until you realize I live within you. And that God sought me, I have to say, and that God found me. And now it's my choice to continue to pursue looking for those little spiritual experiences along the way, where God kind of winks, like the other day when I sat with, however many people, 300-400 people, as they chanted in a blissful state, and just for that moment we're in a place of grace, Or as you're going along and something terrible happens in life, and your friend is standing there next to you, and that's God winking, I was reading a book last night. I was lucky enough to get into bed and pull up the covers and read for a while, and this man was talking about his father died. He was the most important man to him. And time went on, and he walks every day where he walks along this lake. And one day, he turned the corner. It was his father's birthday that morning. He was out for his ordinary walk, and there was a deer standing at them, looking him straight in the eye, and the deer didn't move, and he didn't move. And he knew that was his father. Just come to say hello to him, because he never sees deers there at that moment. And for him, at that moment, God winked. So as we live in this material world, I have to say, with spiritual principles and a belief of a God, if we open ourselves up to the possible different experiences along the way, whether it be, Krishna Das and chanting, or a Catholic Mass, or sitting in a circle, with a drumming circle, talking to whatever that creator is. If we look for those places where God winks at us and we know that presence is there, in some way we are pursuing a spiritual active path. And for the God that sought me down the highways and the byways and alleyways, I have to say, in my youth, I now pursue that God down all those little different places, I have to say. And it makes all the difference. And when I get discouraged, I know there will be another place of God winking, or another Krishna Das moment, or another moment just in this chapel, just like this morning, even though there's just a handful of us here because of the storm during that healing time, where I just soak in that spiritual energy of just quiet peace, which in this chaotic climate at the moment is just really necessary. So as you think about that the positive way of looking at the path of God seeking you, what are you doing to seek those other moments that brings that wink of God certainly alive in your own life? Because I truly do believe in that poem. The hound of heaven will seek us. And whatever it is, may you look for it in a way that makes you continue to search. I've always said if next week I believed I should be Buddhist, I would go be Buddhist. If that would be the thing that brought me closer to the heart of the God that I love, that would be the next right thing to do. So as we think about this morning, God winking at you in the ways you look for it along your path, I have to say, may you stay spiritually alive in your own path and stay true to the relationship you have within your deep heart. Because if it means changing sometimes the spiritual path, it may be the thing that opens your heart for a period of time that helps you to grow. Mavis Patil always says things come for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And maybe your faith is the one that suits you for a lifetime. For some of us, it winds around many different roads. But I can't wait to get to India, to the Valley of Gods, and dance with those people as they dance. Those are my thoughts for today.